What's going on, everybody? Let's get into the boxing post-fight recap of what happened this weekend. Let's jump through them real quick. Let's start with Katie Taylor and Chantelle Cameron too. There were a couple changes throughout that fight team. I thought for the most part, it actually looked pretty similar. But the changes that Katie Taylor made throughout the fight was the fact that she came forward a little bit more and she was letting her hands go a lot quicker in the fight to me. And I thought that was part of the big reason why she won that fight, man. She was throwing a lot more volume. Chantelle Cameron, while she was bringing the pressure, she wasn't really always in range to land the shots. And Katie Taylor would step aside and she would, boom, clip her with shots. And so her countering in that fight was very well. The thing for me, that fight could have easily been a draw, in my opinion, in my perspective, because here's why. I forgot whether it was within the first 3 rounds, I believe it was, the knockdown that was not counted. I thought Katie Taylor got knocked down. I thought Chantelle Cameron fired with the left hand. Katie Taylor tried to step back, but she got clipped on the shoulder and she hit the canvas, and the ref did not score that a knockdown and said the feet were tangled. But to me, I thought it was a clear knockdown. If that knockdown counted 10-8 round, that fight probably would have been a draw. It's always going to be a close fight with these two, in my opinion. And I think one of the biggest things, as many of you have said, and as we've talked about, it didn't surprise me that Katie Taylor won the fight. Some of you even said in the comments, Akeem, don't be surprised if Katie Taylor comes out and win, and now we're setting up for the trilogy. We may see that trilogy, right? Who knows what will happen next? But I'm not surprised that Katie Taylor won the fight. Whenever the hometown fighter is fighting, whether we want to believe it or not, there is a advantage to that. I'm not saying Katie Taylor didn't fight a great fight. She made great adjustments. She fought a great fight. I thought Katie Taylor and Chantelle Cameron too was one of the better rematches that we've seen in quite some time. Like, these two put everything on the line. It was an exciting fight. It was an entertaining fight, a high action, intense fight. It was a great rematch, but there were some things that I thought if it was on neutral ground, maybe the outcome would have been a little bit different. You're in Ireland. It is a pro Katie Taylor background. I mean, that was a fight where, the commentary was crazy biased. You would have thought that there was just one person in the fight. You would have thought Katie Taylor was fighting herself, because they were not really mentioning some of the good work that Chantelle Cameron was doing. All in all, very good rematch. We'll see if we see a trilogy. I thought it was those small adjustments by Katie Taylor that she made. She was able to win that fight, man. Chantelle Cameron had her moments. I thought she had Katie Taylor hurt a couple times, wasn't able to capitalize on it. I thought Katie Taylor stood in the pocket a little bit more and stood her ground, something she did not really do in the first fight. And so I felt like the judges liked the aggression. They liked what she was doing, and she was able to come away with the win. Let's move up. Let's talk about Michel Rivera and Sergey Lipinets. That fight kind of played out how I thought it would, man. I did not think the best way for Rivera to win the fight was to stand and trade inside of the pocket. That wasn't a game plan for him that would be successful, because Lipinets is 35. Yes, he's a little bit older, but the man still has good pop in his shots. He's still a physical guy. And Michel Rivera just stood on the outside and just boom, right? Jab, combinations, step on the outside, jab, combination, slip on the inside. Moments when he was in the pocket trading shots, but he did not stay in there for long. That was the fight that he needed to execute in order to win. But I thought he came out. I thought he looked explosive. I thought he looked strong. Thought the quickness and the speed was still there. And those are the two defining factors for me that I felt like he was able to control that fight. Lipinets came on strong, and he was starting to close the gap a lot better in the second half of the fight, and he was starting to let his hands go a little bit more. And you knew once it was going to be a physical fight, you just felt like that would not be the thing that Rivera needed to get into, and he was smart enough and disciplined enough not to do too much engaging inside the middle, inside the pocket, but do what was working in the first half of the fight and come out of the fight without getting banged up too much and really showcase his boxing skill. I thought he did a great job of boxing and a great job of discipline. Lipinets, man, hopefully he's a tough test, but now he's stuck in a position where it's like that gatekeeper position. He's got a couple losses on his resume now. He's getting a little bit older, so there's still gonna be paydays for him. It's just in a different role. But again, I thought Rivera boxed beautifully and he was disciplined. And I think those are the reasons why he was able to get the win. So I wasn't really too surprised by the outcome and how that fight came together. Let's move up. Let's talk about Hector Luis Garcia versus Lamont Roach Jr. This was an interesting fight, man, because I felt like Lamont Roach, man, his activity, right? At the first, a lot of that fight kind of looked the same from round to round. I didn't really think a lot of men were really doing a whole lot, honestly. But I thought Lamont Roach, every single round, for the most part, was just doing a little bit more. Yeah, some of the shots in the beginning, Garcia, it was big, it was eye-catching, you could see it. But then he would just back off. And he would allow Lamont Roach to come forward, and he wasn't throwing anything back. He was trying to counter him, trying to move around the ring confidently, taunting a little bit, trying to do his thing. But I'm like, bro, you need to start letting your hands go a little bit because it's not looking too good for you. And I thought, when I broke down the video, I thought Garcia was going to be the one to let his hands go a little bit more. You're coming off a loss, right? You have something to prove here. You need to be the one to dictate the pace and the tempo. You got to let the hands go. And he didn't really do that throughout the fight. But I don't know what was going on inside of his head, man. It's like how he was boxing. He probably thought that he was winning the fight, right? Because that was not the case. He was accurate with the shots, yes. But at the same time, he was not throwing enough. And Lamont Roach outworked him for the greater portion of that fight. And then in the 11th round came, it was over with once he had him stumbled, had him hurt, and he was fighting on the back foot, man. Garcia just did not look like himself, man. Maybe he didn't really recover from that Tank fight, but he looked very hesitant. He looked like he didn't want to engage too much. Sometimes he looked like he didn't want to get hit. And he wasn't like that prior to fighting Tank. I don't know what the situation was. Only he knows. Maybe we'll get a better explanations, but credit to him for coming back down to defend his title. But in this fight, Lamont Roach just wanted it more, just hungry, just more locked in. He was willing to take risks, right? He was willing to take a shot for a shot. He was willing to come forward. He was willing to be the aggressor. He was willing to do whatever needed in order to win the fight, and he came out on top. I thought he fought a very, very good, consistent fight throughout the whole fight. You got to take your hats off to him, right? Lamont Roach Jr. was the better fighter on that night. Completely the better fighter on that night. Hector Luis Garcia is in a tough position now because it's like, well, where do we go from here? Where is his mentality? He just looked very hesitant to me and did not want to engage. He was trying to press the pace in the last round, but by then it was too late, man. You know what I'm saying? So just very interesting, man. I was not expecting that type of fight from Hector Luis Garcia, but shout out to Lamont Roach for how he fought, the determination and the will to be a champion on that night. And he became a champion. Shout out to him for his win. Let's keep going. Let's talk about Jermall Charlo and Jose Benavidez Jr. All in all, despite everything that has happened in Jermall Charlo the past 2.5 years, the inactivity, all of the stuff leading up to this fight, I actually thought he performed pretty good, right? The jab was still solid. The jab was still apparent. Jab was still stiff and snappy and strong. The right hand was still strong and powerful. And I thought there was an opportunity where he could have gotten the stoppage win if the ref didn't jump into the way, because he had Benavidez hurt. Thought Benavidez is just, man, that man is just too tough for his own good, man. Like, that's a guy where you are literally going to have to take him out if you want him to stop coming forward and stop bringing that pressure. He's going to take his risks. He believes in himself. He believes in what he can do. He's just a tough night, man, because you got to put him away. He does not stop coming forward. I was very impressed though with Jermall Charlo, because for me, man, no matter how good you are at something, if you don't do something and don't get back into that competitive nature feeling, the feeling of high performance sports, man, you lose a little bit of that inside. Like the nerves get a little bit bigger and the fears get a little bit bigger and the anxiety gets a little bit bigger. And so you're never really sure how someone is going to handle the competition when they've been away from it for so long. It happens in track, it happens in basketball, in boxing, and in every sport. Inactivity can cause a lot of doubts. But I thought he looked confident inside the ring. I thought his skill set was still there. The jab was still there. He's big inside the ring, man. I'm not sure what he weighed, but it was definitely over the weight that they were supposed to fight at for sure. So all in all, man, I thought Jermall Charlo fought a good fight. I thought he handled himself inside of the ring, not emotional. I thought he technically did what he needed to do and took a step forward, right? Took a step forward. And so I'm expecting more from Charlo next year. I'm expecting him to be a lot more active inside of the ring because he's still got some good years left in him. He's still got some good physical ability and strengths that has made him successful. So hopefully he becomes more active and we can see him in fights that we want to see. He wants Canelo. Bro, you're probably not going to get Canelo, maybe, but you're probably not going to get that fight. But maybe we can get a Caleb Plant, you know what I'm saying? Maybe we can get one of those guys to see how he really is, because Jose Benavidez Jr., man, this guy was just fighting Bud Crawford a couple of years back. So he's not naturally at this size inside of the ring. So Charlo did what he needed to do. And hopefully this is a positive thing for Charlo and we see him more active and he's in good spirits and continues to stay active. And we don't have to wait 2.5 years to see him back in the ring, because he's still got a couple good years left, but he's in that twilight zone right now, in my opinion. Let's talk about Subriel Matias versus Shohjahon Ergashev. What do we think about that fight? What did we think about that fight? Honestly, I thought Ergashev in the beginning half, once first round, second round, third round, man, he was looking kind of dangerous a little bit there, wasn't he? Right? Hiding behind that left hand, boom, firing that left hand, firing some pretty heavy shots. And he was staying out of range of Matias and kind of making it a little bit tough for him to be that physical guy that Matias likes to be, firing that jab to the head, boom, to the body, trying to break it through the guard. Not all of those shots were getting through. Matias was blocking some of those shots, but Ergashev was doing his thing for a little bit there, man. Now, the consistent pressure of Matias is always going to be dangerous. It is always going to be something that you need to be cognizant of, because when you are just trying to evade someone, man, and trying to get out the way, that takes a lot on your legs as well, too. To be in constant movement on the back foot, stepping side to side, trying to punch out of these stances, trying not to get hit, that takes a lot out of you. And then when you have someone from in close who is relentless and strong, who finds openings from in close and doesn't need a whole lot of space to really land their shots, and they're heavy-handed, at some point it's going to catch up to you. Your conditioning has to be amazing when you're fighting a guy like Matias, right? Because his conditioning is amazing. His relentlessness is going to get to you at some point. You cannot evade him for 12 rounds because he is going to come forward. You are going to get tired. And at some point, it is going to tire out your legs. And that's when he is going to impose his will and size and power on you. And that's what he did, man. From in close, he was hitting the head, hitting the body. He was finding shots from angles. He was punching shots in that shouldn't have got in, but it got in. And so Ergashev just looked like he got tired. I know he said there was some injury that happened that made his legs tired. And when if you get hurt against a guy like Matias, man, that's just all bad. It's all bad when you're healthy, but it's all bad even more when you are a little bit banged up. And that's what I just saw, man. Matias just grinded it out, did what he needed to do to get on top and to win the fight, man. He's a tough guy to beat. And I thought his movement was a lot better in previous fights that we've seen. Like, his in-close game, to me, continues to improve and operate at a very high level, man. It's hard to fight someone who is not afraid to get hit and is not afraid of you. Matias isn't afraid of anybody. He doesn't get intimidated by nobody. He believes what he can do is 10 times greater than what you can do. And so for me, how he was able to break down Ergashev was very, very remarkable, man. That's just what he does. The moment you feel like you have the upper hand on Matias, he comes out and he shows, look, I have more in me left, man. I don't know what that man's conditioning is like, but it is out of this world. He is probably one of the hardest guys to take the belt from in a 140-pound division because of what he can do and his physicality and his style, man. It's a tough night for anyone in that division. Let's talk about the main event, David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. I thought Andrade in the early half of the fight, I thought he fought pretty well. I thought he was doing what he did at 160 that made him successful in this fight, moving and slipping and being awkward and finding different ways how to maneuver inside of the ring. He was dipping low, trying to give different looks, trying to lunge forward, just trying to make this a tricky fight for David Benavidez. The thing when it comes to the pressure of David Benavidez and pressure fighters, good pressure fighters, is they don't always have to throw to tire you out. When you have someone who's always coming forward and you're on the back foot and you're trying to get out the way and you're trying to punch out of your movements, you're trying to do everything to avoid being hit, but trying to make sure you're a step ahead where you can anticipate where they're going to be next. It takes a lot out of you just from movement wise. For the first 3 rounds of that fight, David Benavidez was just coming forward. He was trying to hit, but Andrade was making it tough because of the movement. But you could start to see that Andrade was slowing down a little bit and the pressure was starting to get to him because you have David Benavidez, who is already a big 168 guy who could probably campaign, at cruiserweight, heavyweight if he really wanted to, right? But you have a guy who can come forward, a guy who's smart, a guy who knows how to slip in his punches, a guy who's fast, who has quick hands, and knows how to maneuver from in close and on the outside. Those shots eventually started to get through. Some of the shots that David Benavidez was landing, man, he was punching down. Andrade would sometimes, right, be kind of hunched over, and you could see Benavidez, right, didn't really know in the early part how to really land the shot because he didn't want to get, illegal hit to the head or illegal hit to the side. So he had to kind of angle his punches in different ways. So he would angle a punch down, right? He would dip down himself and punch up because he had to find the legal openings because Andrade is tricky inside of the ring, man. And David Benavidez, like he usually does, breaks you down. We saw the knockout in the 4th or the 5th round before we saw the ultimate result in the 6th round where he got stopped. I felt like Andrade was going to be able to withstand some of that pressure. I didn't think he was going to stand in the pocket and fight as much as he did. Maybe he sees something that could have worked. Maybe he wanted to bring the pressure and the aggressiveness towards him, but it was starting to get pretty ugly, man. It was starting to look bad. David Benavidez, when he starts landing his shots, man, it was going to be a wrap. So I'm glad the corner stopped the fight because Andrade was too tough for his own good, man. I was surprised he survived that 4th and that 5th round. He took a lot of punishment, a lot of clean shots. His heart kept him up. But Benavidez knows how to close out the show. And when he's gotten you hurt, when he knows that you're tired, as Andrade kind of looked like he looked gassed out, David Benavidez just kept bringing the pressure even more, kept doubling up, hitting everything that he could find, whether it was to the head, whether it was to the body, to the arms, the forearms, the abdomen, the body shots. He was finding the right openings at the right time, and he took advantage of that. Every time I see Benavidez inside of the ring, he performs better and better and continues to improve and improve. And in this fight, he took another step up. Because Andrade is a tough opponent. Yeah, he's coming up to a new division, but that doesn't mean the skills are gone. That doesn't mean the talent is gone. It's just the weight goes up. And it just goes to show how good David Benavidez is at this weight class, man. So, yeah, we would love to see him against Canelo Alvarez next. We might see that. We may not. Maybe we see him against David Morrell. We would love to see that. We might not see that as well, too, because Morrell is a high risk, low reward type of guy at this stage. Benavidez wants the titles, he wants the belts, he wants the big fights. So we'll see what happens, man. But again, another fight that I left thinking, man, that's an impressive fight by Benavidez, because we see him continuing to improve. So we can talk about he's flat-footed, he doesn't move the best, and this and that, but the man's a winner. He knows how to win fights, and that's all that truly, truly matters. Every person isn't perfect in all of their areas, but the parts that they are good at, you double down on that. And he has doubled down in the areas that has made him successful, man. So ultimately, I thought it was a great weekend of boxing. There's a lot of action this weekend, man. So what are your thoughts on all of these fights? What stuck out to you? What did you like? What didn't you like? Who would you like to see any of the guys that I mentioned fight next? Let me know in the comment section below.